All right. It feels like it's been forever since I have done a LinkedIn Live. So let's dig in. Today, I want to talk about how to pick the right career coach for yourself. Now, if you don't know me and this is the first time that you hop on one of my LinkedIn Live events, full disclosure, I am actually an executive career coach. I've been doing this for close to 7 years and I've helped more than 1,000 people. Now, the other interesting fact is that I have been in your shoes. So, if you are a director, a senior professional with more than 15 years of experience, you might realize that you need help making a change in your career and you don't want to do it alone. But you have no idea what career coach to go with because there's a lot of career coaches out there, right? How do you decide who to choose? And so the purpose of this live is to give you some guidelines, some criteria, what to watch out for, because at the end of the day, like, I think there is a career coach for everyone. And you need to make sure that whoever you work with is the right fit for you because it's a very vulnerable journey that you're putting yourself into. And sadly, with everything, with every type of profession, it's very difficult to know if whoever you're working with is actually qualified. So, let me start with the most important thing. In 2018, I quit over text and I realized that it was time for me to seriously figure out what I love doing. You see, the thing is, I was sort of like ignoring what I enjoyed. I was leaning hard into what I was good at. And that is because I'm a high performer, I'm an ambitious person. And when you are that way, you tend to be very hard on yourself. You tend to ignore what brings you joy and focus more on high performance, on getting things done, worrying about how people are going to perceive you and judge you, especially if you've had a very conservative upbringing like me. I came from a Middle Eastern family that really put a lot of emphasis on academia and working hard and constantly proving yourself, and there wasn't that element of, do you even enjoy what you do? So that conditioned me to be in that situation. But things built up for me. Like, I felt I was sacrificing my health. I was traveling for work a lot. I lost half of my pancreas because of a very toxic situation. And I feel that I just reached that threshold where I could no longer pretend to be happy. And of course, I was getting older. Like, I was mid 30s. And at that age, you're no longer like, like forever youthful. You don't have that unlimited energy. And it was at that age where I was starting to think about building a family. And when I started thinking, do I want to build a family this way with a career that is so demanding where I had to constantly travel? The answer was obviously no. So I knew that I had to be intentional about the rest of my career because I wasn't getting younger. And I wanted a return on my investment, the return on my time, the return on my hard work. I wanted to be well compensated, but at the same time, I didn't want to feel like I was in a job that was like golden handcuffs. So, anyway, this is why I quit over text. It was very dramatic. I texted my boss basically that I quit. He was surprised, but at the same time, he kind of saw it coming because I kept talking about it, that I was going to quit every few months. And I finally did it. What happened after I quit I was a bit cocky. I thought I was going to find a job pretty fast, but I ended up in this situation where um, it was taking longer than I expected. How many of you have been in that situation where you felt confident that you were going to find a job and you quit with nothing lined up? I mean, I'm curious. Let me know in the chat if you've ever been in that situation. And by the way, I really value participation because it just makes me feel like there is an audience and I'm not talking to myself. So I would appreciate it if you engage, if you are listening. Okay, even if you just give me a like, that would be amazing. Bonus if you say something in the chat so that I can read it or even ask me questions. Anyway, so yeah, I got cocky. I quit over text. I think it was around November when I did that. And yeah, it was like close to Christmas time. It was pretty horrible not having a job, in Christmas, not being able to afford, Christmas gifts. And I remember even that my microwave broke down around that point in time. And I was just shuffling money from like one credit card to another. Anyway, it was bad. So yes, it took longer than I thought it would take. And of course, you go when you are basically unemployed, you go through these phases. Phase one, you're excited. You're like giving them the finger. And you're like, I'm better off without you. And then you're like, oh my God, I have all this freedom. I can wake up whenever I want to. And then phase two is when you're excited. You're like, I'm going to apply for jobs. I'm going to get something fast. And then phase three is when you start getting the rejections and you realize, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to just take anything. Right. So those are the phases that I was in. So long story short, what happened was I took a contract because I obviously needed some income, but it was the same old story where I just took a basically contract, doing the same type of work, dealing with the same politics. And I just didn't know how to disrupt the pattern. I didn't know, like, it just got to the point where I could no longer pretend that I wasn't happy. It felt like torture. I remember, like, it was so bad. I would go downstairs to the food court and I would watch Netflix just to be able to cope and just end the day. That's how bad it was. I would sneak out and go shopping because I used to work in the financial district area in Toronto where all of the shops, are there. I even remember, like, I got a gym membership at like one of those really nice, gyms that had like a pool, and I would sneak out when I didn't have meetings and I would go to the pool just to survive. But it wasn't healthy because here's the thing. Um, we are, as human beings, created to derive pleasure from being of service to others. And when you're just killing time and you're constantly partying and constantly just, passing time, if you are an ambitious person and if you are a high achiever, you start feeling like there's this hole in your chest. That's the best way I can describe it. So yeah, when that was going on, I decided that I needed to hire a career coach. I actually didn't even know what a career coach was. At first, I just went on Fiverr and Upworks and just like did a search on resumes and thought, okay, maybe I just need a new resume to get a better job, right? I didn't know any better at that point in time. And then I would just get like this piece of paper that didn't even match who I was, or my logic was off because getting a resume writer without figuring out the career direction or what role matched my skills, that's like a definition of insanity, because all it did was it just got me the same type of jobs because I'm practically hiring someone to just reword like my past roles, versus help me connect the work that I was doing to where I wanted to be. But the problem was I didn't even know where I wanted to be. All I knew was what I did before. So anyway, back to my point in terms of figuring out what career coach would be the right fit for you. My biggest eye opener was when I worked with the coach who eventually helped me become a career coach. And the first question that she asked me was, we can either help you land the same type of role that you've been doing, and we can do it pretty fast, or we can take the time and figure out what you want to do next, because clearly you're not happy with all of these roles that you've done in the past. And of course, I said, no, I want to figure out what I want to do next. I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again, because that's the definition of insanity. And I can't pretend that I'm happy anymore. I want to grow in my career. So find someone who is not just going to help you with the tactics. Find someone who helps you build a strategy and asks you the right question. So that's criteria number one when you're looking for a coach. At the end of the day, all of these tactics, honestly, like if you just want a resume, you can just go on ChatGPT and build a resume if that's all you want. That's not what's blocking you. Most of the time that I see people get blocked is not because of their resume. I mean, that is a component, obviously, but it's almost like saying, just take some Tylenol for the pain that you're experiencing. Yeah, if you take Tylenol, it's better than not taking anything, but it's not going to fix the headache that you have. It's not going to make it go away. It's not going to it's just like numbing it, right? You're always going to get that pain. You're always going to get those headaches, and you're going to just take Tylenol every day, right? So it's the same thing. The resume, especially if you don't start with figuring out what you want to do, is a surface level solution. Just like Tylenol is a surface level solution to the root cause of why you have that pain in the first place. So to me, like a coach, the difference between a coach and a resume writer is a coach will never basically say, hey, let's just jump into the solution. Let's just, build your resume. Just like a true doctor is not going to say to you, hey, just take this Tylenol, right? They're going to diagnose why you need it, why you're hurting, why you're struggling. Okay. Now, when it comes to career direction, I want to say something very important, because again, with the unfortunate emergence, in some ways unfortunate, in many ways useful, but with the emergence of AI, it becomes very difficult to figure out if that person is actually trained in helping you figure out your direction. Because I'll tell you guys a story of a client that I worked with. She was promised by this service that they were going to help her figure out what she wants to do next. Because as a director, right, as a VP, as a senior professional with more than 15 years of experience, one of the biggest problems that you may be having is you're a jack of all trades and you've done so many things in your career. And what you're probably trying to do is you're trying to say that I'm able to do this, I'm able to do that, I'm able to, let's say, manage products, I'm able to manage lead operations, and you're not able to share your specialty because you've worn so many hats. But the problem with that is there's lack of focus. If you think about, let's say, when you buy a product like this, right? The product, for it to be memorable, it needs to be known for one thing, not 10 things, because you're not going to remember if you see a product and it tries to be 10 things to you. Like, I'll never remember this product if it tries to tell me that, oh, I'm a sports drink and I'm a migraine, drink, and I'm a fun drink. It's only going to go with one thing. Maybe the focus is going to be health. Maybe the focus is going to be energy, right? But you rarely see a product that's marketing itself or that's remembered as multiple things. It's only remembered as one thing. And so you need to find someone who's going to help you figure out what I call it is your differentiator. What do you want to be known for? And I'm not talking about title. I'm not talking about being put in a box. I'm talking about your value proposition. If you can boil it down to that one thing, what would it be? Now, back to that story of that client that I want to talk to you guys about. So she found the service. They claim that they can help her figure that out. But what they ended up doing is downloading her LinkedIn profile, downloading her resume, and then just feeding it into AI and taking her onto this path, making her believe that if she went into this change management path, that's what's going to get her opportunities. The problem is, I'm not saying that AI is bad, but it's almost like if you took your X-ray and you uploaded it on ChatGPT and you took all of your blood results and you upload it into ChatGPT without any medical training, you try to diagnose yourself, it's not going to be the right diagnosis because you don't know what to look for and you don't know what information you should be giving the AI. It actually happened to me where I tried diagnosing myself by uploading all of my, blood results and x-rays and all of that. And ChatGPT and Claude told me that I had a stress fracture. But it turned out that I didn't have a stress fracture. I actually had a cyst in my foot. And so I was basically misleading the AI and giving it a lot of biased information because I didn't have medical training. And I was treating my foot as if it was broken. I was wearing an air cast, which actually made things worse. I got pain in my back. I was suffering. I was delaying the healing. And in the end, it turned out to be a cyst. And all I had to do is go to a doctor and have them basically drain the cyst. And it was gone. Like the pain was gone within like a couple of days. Right? So that's the thing. When you work with someone who's not trained and they're promising you these things, it's very dangerous. Right? So with this client, when she worked with that service, they told her that her value proposition, by the way, that's not a value proposition. That's a title, right? They told her that her value proposition is she should be in change management. When I sat down with her and we went through her entire history and story, I realized that she's actually in business transformation, not change management. First of all, when you're a director, especially if you're strategic, you really are, you want to be in a position where you're part of the strategy, that you're not just managing timelines and you're managing deliverables. And her biggest frustration, based on everything that she shared with me, was she was often treated almost like she was part of the PMO, not someone who's rolling out. Part of what she was doing was she was rolling out multiple stores across different regions and being part of shaping the company's direction. That is not change management, okay? And so this service misled her because they didn't have the training to ask her the right questions, first of all. They didn't have the context and understanding of the different roles that are in corporate. You need to work with someone I mean, I hate to say this. Like a lot of people say, hey, when you work with a coach, they don't necessarily need to have done the job. But that's not very accurate. The thing is, when let's bring it to the sports analogy, right? If you're working with a soccer coach who's never kicked a ball and who's at least at a minimum experienced being a player, it's going to be completely different. Even if they sucked as a player, at least they experienced the field. They've been in your shoes, right? So a lot of times when clients come to me, the reason I'm able to help them figure out what they need to do next is because I have been in that environment. I've been in consulting where I worked with large teams on humongous, $1 billion transformations. I've worked with different people in these roles, whether it's in operations, whether it's in agile transformation, whether it's in program management, whether it's in design, whether it's in product, whether it's in development. The nature of my experience as someone who's been in consulting and moved around a lot, exposed me to that. And so when I talk to someone and I read their experience, I understand it because I have that context. Versus when you're working with a coach who may not have been in corporate or may not have been in technology or may not have that breadth of experience of being in those programs that you've been in or being in those organizations that you've been in, it's really going to be difficult for them to advise you and connect the dots or ask you the right question because they are missing that context. And so, of course, they are going to rely on AI to help them with that. And it's going to be the same phenomenon as you uploading your x-rays or blood test results to ChatGPT and then being misled and diagnosing yourself incorrectly. So she spent basically a whole month thinking that she should target change management roles. She ended up going to all of these interviews and they didn't convert into offers. And she ended up being frustrated because she spent all of that time, targeting the wrong role because the strategy was incorrect. Okay? So this is why I advise you that when you choose a coach, make sure that coach, right, has exposure to your world, understands your role and what you've done, from the sense of they either worked with someone like you before they became a coach in corporate. If they're a full-time coach, they should have had a corporate career. And if they're part-time coach, if they are actually working in a role close to what you've done. Okay, so that's the number one criteria that I'm going to share. Now, if I think about all the people that I helped, I'm actually pretty clear with my clients and pretty honest. Like if someone comes to me and they're in a blue collar role, for example, or they're like a mechanic, or they're in or they work at a coffee shop or something like that, and they want to, or they're in manufacturing and they want to progress in that world, I'm honest and I tell people I'm not the right coach for you because I don't understand that world. I don't have that context. And there are certain countries that have let us say different sort of culture, different hiring systems. And I basically am honest again. And I say, if you are looking for someone to help you navigate that space, it's probably not going to be me. This is why I focus on US, Canada, Europe, UK, Australia, New Zealand. That's the extent of it. If someone tells me, "Oh, I'm Saudi Arabia, can you help me?" I'll usually say no, because even though I was born in the Middle East, I've never really worked in the Middle East. I left when I was 18. I don't understand the hiring system there. I don't understand the politics that go on. I understand the North American, the European system. Okay. So the person needs to be honest with you about what they can and can't do. All right. Let's talk about the other criteria of choosing a coach. That person needs to relate to you, and you need to relate to them. I don't just mean from a profession perspective. I also mean from a background perspective, from a life experience perspective, right? A lot of clients who come to me, they relate to my story. They relate to, my story of how my parents basically gave me these three choices: doctor, engineer, or failure. They relate to some of the childhood, hardships that I went through. They relate to how frustrated I was being burnt out, losing half of my pancreas, navigating toxic environments. You need someone who's going to be able to empathize with your situation. You can't have someone who's judging you because you're going through a tough time or being condescending. So that's another thing that you need to look for when you are choosing a coach. I'm going to tell you guys a story that recently happened to me. It's quite hot, like spicy, I will say. And you know what? It's fine because that person doesn't watch my lives and is never on LinkedIn. And I'm not revealing any identifying information. But I recently worked with a coach because, as a coach, sometimes you also need a coach. I was looking for a coach to basically look at my entire content and help me come up with ideas, because sometimes, when you're writing content all the time, just like you guys, right? You have all this experience. You've been doing it for so long. You need someone from the outside who can help you organize your ideas. That's what I do for my clients. I needed someone to do that with me. And so I hired her to help me with that, to take all this mess in my brain, the 1,000 clients that I worked with, everything that I've been doing day in, day out, all of these success stories, and I wanted her to help me organize it. So she saw one of my stories of how when I was 18, or 17 rather, I left my home country because my dad threw a can of car oil at me. And so I shared the story of how I left and I built my entire life in Canada and I've been successful. But she said something to me that really bothered me, which was, I read your story and I don't think you should share it because I actually felt sorry for you, and you should not have people feeling sorry for you. I was so taken aback because I hired this person to help me. And I felt a sense of how do I say this? Like it was a condescending comment. I don't sugarcoat things. I'm very blunt. And it just felt like she was looking down on me because of that life experience. And so this is what I mean. You want to feel like you can open up about your life and your career when you're working with a coach. And if you're feeling this vibe where the person can't connect with you or is looking down on you because you went through a difficulty in your career or your life, you know that that person is not the right fit to work with you, because you should never feel that way. You should never feel like you're being judged because you went through hardships. Like that experience that I went through with that person is something that I wanted to make sure that none of my clients ever go through. So that's another criteria that I want you guys to keep in mind. You can find these things out when you're having a consultation call with a coach. If you start sharing some of your difficulties and hardships during the consultation call, and you can tell that that person is judging you, making you feel bad, then that's a red flag. And you don't want to actually proceed with that person. Okay, what else do I want to say? Story is seeing if that person is able to tell their story is very important. If a coach is not able to show any signs of vulnerability, I'm not saying that they should share their darkest, deepest secrets, like, all over social media, but they should share some element of personal stuff. If they can't do that at all, and everyone has a different scale of comfort, right? Like, I shared a pretty sensitive story about, my childhood and my dad, and that's because I'm a pretty open person and my comfort level is pretty, like, up there. But even if I just shared with you guys how I quit over text, that's personal enough to show you that I encourage you to open up. Because if the person is not able to open up, then that's not going to encourage you to open up too. It's not going to feel safe that you can open up. Okay. How do you, and by the way, guys, ask me questions. If you have a question in terms of what are things that you should look for in a career coach, or if you were looking for a career coach and you encountered something, feel free to drop it in the chat because I'm happy to answer that. Like I said, I've been in your shoes where I was looking for a career coach. I've been doing this for close to 7 years, and I've also coached other coaches. So I can give you a lot of guidelines in terms of what to look for. Okay, I'm going to go into credibility now. Whoever you end up working with, they need to have some kind of framework or a system. Now, I'm not saying that they need to have a cookie cutter rigid system that they force on you, because the way I think about it, every client who comes to me is unique. Okay. And when I think about the end-to-end journey from someone coming to me feeling like they're stagnant, they're stuck, and they want to turn things around, they're in point A and they want to get to point B. Point A, I'm not happy with where I'm at my career. And point B is, this is the destination that I want to get to that's going to make me happy. And point B can be different for everyone. Point B can be, I want to move up. I'm going to be happy if I get promoted. Point B to someone else could be, I want higher compensation. I feel stressed financially. I'm doing all this work. I'm not feeling recognized. And I would be a lot happier if I was making an extra 10K or 20K or 30K or even an extra 100K. I've helped clients add 100,000 to their existing 6-figure salary. Or maybe point B is, I want to do something completely different. I want to change industries, or I want to get into a different profession. So point B is going to be different to every individual. Now, the coach needs to have a high-level system depending on what your point B is. They need to have helped someone like you before, right? So what I would do is I would definitely ask for testimonials, or I would ask them for a case study of someone similar to you who had similar problems. You don't need to look for a case study of someone who is exactly like you, because it's like there isn't always it's not always an indication, okay, that they can help you. All right. But it needs to be similar problems at a high level. For example, it doesn't have to be, let's say, a mom If you're a mom and that person needs to be exactly a mom and they need to be in this exact country and the exact title. No, no, no. At a high level, you know, maybe you're blocked from getting promoted, right? So have you helped someone get promoted? Maybe the block is you tend to ramble. You know, you're not a you're when you communicate, you can be long-winded and the recruiter ends up falling asleep when they listen to you. Have you helped someone who struggled with being concise, right? So the more examples the person can give you and transparently share with you what is a system that they put someone like you through, what was their approach, the better you're going to have in terms of an idea of whether the person can help you or not. The biggest red flag is when a coach is not creating any content. They don't have anything that talks about their approach. They're just making empty promises. They are just basically playing with your emotions and making all of these like outrageous guarantees, but they're not openly sharing with you their system. To me, yes, it's unfair to ask someone for free advice, but at the same time, they need to give you a taste of basically what to expect when you work with them. If it is a secret, if they're not being open about it, even though you're asking them, then to me it is a red flag. It's like, imagine if you basically want to get a surgery done and the doctor is not being transparent with you about what the procedure would look like. That's scary. Like, you can't just go in without those expectations set for you. Like when I went for my foot after I found out that there was a cyst, the doctor didn't just say surprise and stuck a needle in my foot. I would have freaked out, right? They sat down with me. They said to me, well, first we're going to do an ultrasound and then we're going to locate the cyst. And by the way, we're going to inject you. Before we inject you, we are going to put a numbing, a steroid to numb the pain. And then they do it, right? So if a coach is not sharing with you what to expect at a high level, right, then that is a bit of a red flag. Again, you don't need to learn the nitty gritty. Like, the surgeon is not going to tell you like what size of the needle it's going to be and the exact tools and how long they're going to open you up. But at a high level, they need to share with you what the end-to-end journey is going to look like. That's going to take you from point A to point B. They need to give you an example of someone who went through that journey so that you know what to expect, right? Like, I'll tell you guys a story of another client that I worked with. This company promised her that when they work with her, she's just going to get people reaching out to her for jobs. And they made a promise that she was going to get all of these inbound leads. Why? Because a lot of these people, these services, they have great salespeople who at the end of the day just want to sell, and they don't care about making sure that they're being transparent about the approach. When I work with people, I'm very transparent about my approach because I don't want someone coming into my program and not putting in the work or butting heads with me the entire time. It's not going to make me happy to constantly defend myself or to constantly convince the person that this is what they need to do. Because it's almost, again, like a surgeon or like a dietitian who creates a diet for you, and then you keep resisting. No, I'm not going to eat this. I'm not going to take this medication. That ends up being frustrating for both parties. So yeah, this service overpromised my client, and they basically made it sound like it was going to be a magic wand that she doesn't need to apply for jobs, that she doesn't need to network, she doesn't need to do all these things. And all she needs to do is revamp her LinkedIn, and opportunities were going to come to her. And in the end, what happened? It was the opposite. They spent all this time asking her to apply to all these jobs, to send all of these cold DMs. And that's where she was spending all her time on. And she was frustrated because it didn't match the expectations that they set for her. Okay. So that's what you want to be wary of. With everything in life, no exceptions, you should run whenever someone tries to sell you a magic pill. If I saw a personal trainer and that personal trainer told me that I'm not going to be exercising, I'm not going to have to like use a lot of weight, and I'm just going to shed all the pounds, or a dietitian who basically tells me that, oh, you're going to eat all the cake you want, you know, I'm going to run because it's not true. We all know it's not true. Anyone who promises you a magic bullet is not being honest and not being truthful. As a high achiever, I don't mind working hard. I just want to make sure that the person gives me the correct strategy and the person gives me feedback on implementation. Because again, based on my experience, the issue in terms of why people don't end up sticking to a program or don't end up getting results, most of the time, it's actually not the information. Most of the time, it's because they weren't given proper feedback while they were implementing the strategy. Okay? Because if I'm just going to watch, if all I need to do is watch a YouTube video, then I don't need a coach, right? I need someone to tell me, or if all I need to do is watch a YouTube video and just do these like, pull-ups or squats, then I can just watch the video and do it. But I want a coach to watch me do it and see if I'm doing it correctly. I don't want to hurt my back. Maybe there's a certain posture that I'm not aware of and I need the person to see me, So it's the same thing with a coach. Like, my program is quite rigorous. I have videos, I have instructions, everything is clear, but people still struggle when they're building their resume. And I'm there to give feedback. Or sometimes, when you're going through like a transformation journey of landing a role, it's not even just about the tactical things. It's also about the emotional roller coaster, the unexpected things that happen as you're navigating this. For example, I'll tell you, like one of my clients, after working with me, all of a sudden his company started talking about downsizing and he's panicking. He's like, oh my God, I'm not going to have time to apply. Should we adjust the strategy? Should I look for a backup? He was torn. Should I start my own business? Should I go for like higher level roles? What should I do? He was overwhelmed. He was confused. And it just helped him so much when we just got on a call and talked it through. Sometimes you just need to speak to a human being because you're not a robot. It's not just about, I'm going to do step 1, step 2, step 3, and I'm going to succeed. Even doing step 2 or step 3 can be emotional for you. You can be torn. Something unexpected at work happens. Maybe a recruiter comes out of the blue and shares with you this opportunity, and now you're torn. Should you leave your job for that opportunity or not? And this is why you need a coach to talk things through, not just, paint by numbers. That's not how coaching works. Okay. Yeah, so those are pretty much most of the pointers that I wanted to share with you all. A lot of this is not just tactics. It's accountability. Obviously, at the end of the day, like, coaches are human beings and they can't be around the clock all the time. It's also dangerous to overly depend on a coach. Like, a good coach is able to empower you to be independent and self-sufficient. They're good at teaching you, but at the same time, they want you to carry on your own. So it is a bit of a delicate balance. However, you also don't want a coach who's completely unavailable. It bothers me when I see some coaches who are extremely transactional. And what they're doing is they're not selling you basically the transformation. They're selling you sessions. They're selling you deliverables. And they don't care whether those deliverables lead to results. They're basically charging you by the hour. And there's no flexibility if you need extra help, if you're stuck. So that's a bit of a problem, right? So, yeah, you don't want to be in a situation where you're working with a service provider who is overly transactional. That's not what you want to do. And again, you can tell if someone is transactional from the consultation call. I will tell you that sometimes I spend an hour with people on the phone before we decide if we're going to work together or not, because I care enough to do my due diligence. I care enough to make sure that I'm being thorough, that I'm asking the right questions. When you see like a coach who just wants to spend 15 minutes with you before you buy, because they just want to quickly rush you and pressure you into a decision without being thorough about your challenges and what you're going through, without spending the time to get to know you, that's an indication of how much time and how available they're going to be when you're working with them. Okay, so I hope that this has been helpful. Yeah, I mean, the last thing that I wanted to say is if any of you have questions or want me to basically film or do a LinkedIn Live on other topics, I'm even thinking about doing a LinkedIn Live on what I feel are the common things that hold people back when they're navigating a career transition. But I'd love it if you actually vote on some topics, plop them in the comments. Let me know if you're not 100% comfortable, sharing that publicly, then you can send me a DM. If you don't know how to send me a DM, let me share with you how to do that. So if you go on my LinkedIn profile, I'm going to show you now. Let's see. I'll do a share screen. Let's see if I can do that. Oh my goodness. What the heck just happened? Okay, let me see if I can do this again. Share screen. Window. There we go. Okay. If we go into my profile, view profile, you can actually message me. It doesn't show for me because I'm looking in my own profile. There should be a message button somewhere here. Let me see if I can use another example. I'm just going to go to one of my, there we go. Yeah, you see this button, message? You can click on it, and that's how you can message me. Okay? If you're not comfortable adding a comment. If you found this useful, I would really appreciate it if you hit like, because it is actually going into someone's feed. By the way, there's one more thing that I forgot to add in terms of picking a coach. Make sure that the coach is part of some kind of association, because that means they're going to uphold a code of ethics. So I'm actually part of the International Association of Career Coaches. If you look here under licenses and certifications, you can see IACC. Now, certifications are not everything, right? There are people who are certified, but not really great at what they do. So, another thing to think about. But if the person is part of a association or certification, at least that can give you a little bit of comfort that they're legitimate and they abide by a code of ethics. All right. The last thing I wanted to say is if you are navigating a career transition and you want to talk to me about your situation, if you're looking for help, you can also book an appointment that is right underneath my name. So you can click on book an appointment and it is going to take you to my booking page. All you need to do is click on this button, book your career diagnosis, and go through this 2-minute intake to share with me your goals and why they're important and what's blocking you. That will give me enough context to have a meaningful conversation with you and be able to design a plan that helps you achieve your goals. Okay. I enjoyed having a conversation with all of you. Again, likes are free. It helps with the algorithm, and you're also helping someone who really needs to hear this and is confused because there's a lot of coaches and they don't know who to pick. So, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you all soon.